A viral video clip of a Phil Collins concert from 35 years ago is suddenly going viral, and we need to talk about it.
I agree. Absolutely. I'm confused. I thought Phil's best days were behind him. Now he's all over my screens. The algo can't serve me anything else. What's happened and why?
Let me help you and everybody understand John Maloney. I am on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and a video pops up of Phil Collins. Clearly, he's doing some sort of live concert. I'm going to pick that it's late 80s, early 90s because I'm a big Phil fan, and I know all of the generations of hairline of Phil Collins, and I can pick exactly when he is, depending on exactly where his hairline is. So I had it pegged for between 89 and 91, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
So I am on Instagram, and this clip comes up that's clearly like memeing this Phil Collins live concert, and it said something like how it feels on a Friday night when you fire up the propane barbecue, and then it cut to the guitar solo from Easy Lover during this thing. And I had never seen this live performance before. I'm a huge Phil Collins fan, but I had never seen this performance, which was all the more interesting to me because I later realized that the concert is taking place in Berlin, where I currently live and reside and have done for the last decade. And what happens in the music video, the one that was being memed in particular, is it's the guitar solo from Easy Lover.
Right.
And Phil Collins' touring guitarist, whose name is Daryl Stuermer, or Daryl Stuermer, who played a bunch with Phil's previous band Genesis, and I think he performs a bit with Phil on. Daryl performs with Phil for years as his guitarist when he was touring. And also shout out to Mum and Dad. I found out that Daryl Stuermer was previously in Jean-Luc Ponty's jazz fusion group. My mother and father will remember Jean-Luc Ponty. We had a music video of this killer Jean-Luc Ponty track called Individual Choice from 1983, which I'm looking very jazzy today as a little bit of a homage to Jean-Luc Ponty and his crazy violin jazz fusion. So, everybody you're going to have two things to check out today on YouTube. Obviously, Phil Collins' Easy Lover live from Berlin 1990. But you also want to, after that, why don't you pop over and check out Jean-Luc Ponty's jazz fusion Individual Choice from 1983. Great. So Daryl Stuermer pops up on my Instagram. The meme says, this is how it feels when we fire up that propane barbecue on a Friday night. And I'm going to tell you right now. First of all, Phil Collins goes, ladies and gentlemen, would you please make some noise on electric guitar for Daryl Stuermer? And then Daryl goes, starts absolutely ripping the axe. And everybody, and the crowd is going absolutely insane. And you're going, man, this is a pretty awesome solo. And then a few seconds in, what happens is it cuts to Phil Collins and the two backup singers that he is singing with. I am, of course, talking about Arnold McCuller and also Fred White. They're the two backup singers.
Yeah.
And they start as Daryl starts ripping the axe, they start doing these like choreographed dance. They obviously have like pre-planned, or they've been touring. I think he did like 120 shows of this Seriously Live tour. Phil Collins in 1990.
Maybe just developed organically.
They just just developed it over time, and so they start sort of clicking their fingers in unison and bobbing back and stepping back and forth. And then Daryl like rips the first like 4 bars of the solo, and then Phil and the singers just absolutely loving it. The crowd's gone mental. And then the thing that everybody has obviously really latched onto is they put their hands on one another's shoulder in a train. The 3 men with Phil in the middle.
Yeah.
And you've got
the famous Phil Collins Human Centipede movie.
The famous Phil Collins, Daryl Stuermer Human Centipede guitar solo. And then you've got Fred White at the front of the Centipede wearing, might I just say, Fred is looking sensational. He's wearing this like red bodysuit, flowing red bodysuit with the chest all open. It's a beautiful mustache, and he's pointing at Daryl on the guitar, and Phil's got his hand on Fred's shoulder.
Right.
And then Arnold has his hand on Phil's shoulder. So they're in that human centipede. And then they all start bobbing their heads back and forth, pointing at Daryl. And it's just this beautiful moment of them. And then Daryl keeps ripping the guitar.
Yeah.
And then they pull out of the human centipede guitar solo and they just start again, just like clicking and bobbing back and forth in unison. And
that's great.
It's just this, and obviously like the musicianship is incredible. And this, I think the reason that it's captured people's attention, so again, just to go back for context as well, which is important. So the concert is from 1990. It takes place in July 15th, 1990. Okay. So this is, and it's in Berlin. It's at the Waldbühne venue, which is a half an hour drive from my house currently right now. I jump in a car and drive. I can be at the Waldbühne in about 30 minutes. And so it takes place
Still a venue?
It's still a venue? Absolutely still a venue. And it looks the same. And so concert is taking place on a warm summer Berlin night in July 15,
6-7 months after the wall came down.
7 months after the Berlin Wall.
Time in Berlin.
What a time. 7 months after the Berlin Wall falls and reunites Germany after Germany has been physically separated for 28 years, ideologically separated for the 41 years of the GDR.
What a moment.
What a moment. You got a bunch of Aussies, as we call them, East Germans, East Berliners, but East Germans as well, who no doubt would have come over to the concert because they're like, man, I've been hearing Phil Collins through the naughty Western airwaves that I shouldn't have been tuning into, but I was.
Totally.
And I've been getting really into Phil Collins in secret. I've been hiding that from Erich Honecker. I don't want him to know. I didn't want him to know that I was mad into In the Air Tonight.
Yeah. Susudio.
I had to place a studio under my doona because I had to hide it from everybody in the building. If the informant in my apartment complex had heard the synth bass of Susudio coming down the stairs, they would have informed on me to their Stasi superiors, and I would have been imprisoned for Susudio.
There's a girl who's been on that man's mind, and she's contraband.
So you've got a bunch of Aussies that have popped over, and you've got a reunited Germany. The atmosphere would have been absolutely electric. And then you're watching it, and everybody in the band would have known this because Phil would have grown up with a divided Germany as well. Everybody in that band had only ever known East Germany and West Germany, and now they're just performing in actual reunited Germany.
Amazing. And
then there's the stuff we talk about on the podcast a lot. There's not a single mobile phone in the audience.
Yeah.
Instead of instead of everybody being on their mobile phones and filming instead of that, you're turning to your brother from the other side of Germany and you're saying we're all the same instead of saying absolutely nothing and just staring at a phone screen. Yeah. I think people are looking at that. Kids are looking at that on TikTok when they watch Phil ripping it out live in Berlin. And they're going, I don't understand why. Where's all the glowing little rectangles that I'm so used to?
How are people posting this if they're not recording it?
People are going, but this guitar solo is so good for content. Why isn't everybody filming and posting on Instagram and TikTok? And I think the other thing which is really striking about it is it's a full band, which you just back in the day, that was like you wouldn't turn to your friend at a Phil Collins concert and go, "Oh, this is crazy." There's like a massive band on stage because that was just like how you performed music, like up until very recently. So there's there's a 4-piece horn section at this concert.
Yeah,
Imagine buying a ticket to a concert for like a reasonable price, and you get a fucking like 4-piece horn section in the band. Obviously there's the drummer who is performing, but there's a second drum kit because Phil, obviously being originally a drummer, he jumps up on the kit himself for some of the songs. Like he does the famous In the Air Tonight like drum fill before it kicks in. Yeah. So you've got
All
like
that-
two drum kits.
sweat and vapor coming off the coming off the drum.
Yeah, totally. With the little earpiece microphone, with the little headset microphone coming. And so you've got this big band on stage creating this huge sound. You've got a keyboardist, you've got color guitarist, drummer, 4-piece horn section.
Amazing.
So it's just like incredible musicianship.
Yeah.
And just this really beautiful energy. And then this guitar solo from Daryl Stuermer. And so people were posting it on TikTok. I don't know who originally posted it, but again, it's a 35-year-old Phil Collins concert, which you wouldn't really think is the kind of thing that's going to pick up a lot of steam. But when this clip has brought me so much joy, because I have a lot of, like, my mum loves Phil Collins. I love Phil Collins.
Yeah.
And then my dad, old man Steve, everybody knows that his favorite thing in the world is just live music. And so I sent it to him and I was like, man, you've got to watch this. Like, have a look at musicianship and the vibe between this band.
From your Prince Soundcheck Japan.
Just turn off Prince Soundcheck Japan for 1 minute, would you please? And so he absolutely loved it. And then, and mum loved it as well, because mum, I don't know how familiar dad would have been with the song, but mum definitely knew the song.
Right.
And dad wrote me and it's like, oh, bloody hell, I can see why that's going viral. It's absolutely sensational. And so, and so I think, and so when I started sending it to people, I think 2 weeks ago, it had 3.8 million streams on YouTube. So what has obviously happened is that somebody posted the videos of it on the vertical video short form sites like TikTok and Instagram, and then a bunch of people have just watched the 30-second head bob guitar solo and gone, I want to see this in full, and they've gone over and found it on YouTube. And so I sent it to you 2 weeks ago and it had 3.8 million, and as of today it has 4.1. So it's picking up like probably over 100,000 viewers a week.
Amazing.
And it's just like a big burst of pure positivity.
Yeah.
Which is what the world needs right now. And what it made me think as well is, look, I know that Phil is not in the best health because I think a lot of his ill health came from, I think he's had a couple of falls and a couple of quite serious back and neck surgeries, which have impacted his health over the last few years. But seeing the kind of positivity around this historical moment where you know, West and East had come together and Phil's there celebrating, it showed me the power of Phil Collins. And so I'm saying, Phil, I don't really care how unwell you are. You got 2 concerts this year, my friend. The first one is going to be Phil Collins live in the Donbass. We're going to put an end to that conflict right now. With Paradise. It's just another day for you and me. Paradise is what's gonna end the Ukraine-Russia war.
Absolutely.
And then Phil, you're heading right over to the Gaza Strip,
Putin just crying, holding hands, and raising. It'll be Zelensky and Putin and Trump, and they'll do the hand on shoulder human centipede.
They will. But another day in paradise. Dun, 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 dun. And then I reckon Gaza Strip's the studio. Fucking, you know who loves the studio? Hamas. Everybody,
it's true.
Hamas fucking love. There's a girl that's been on my mind.
It's the one thing that BB and Hamas have in common is they love Susudio. They've got the same girl on their mind. Yeah, wouldn't that be great? It's a shame, isn't it, that I wonder if he's been made aware of it. I mean, you kind of think if somebody's obviously mentioned it to him, you would assume. But whether he's aware of the fact that after all these years, he's having a little blip of, back in the mainstream, celebrating him at his peak, kind of from Collins. And whether he thinks, you know what? Yeah, I've got a bung shoulder. I might have to just do the old Milli Vanilli style drumming.
Just not touching the drums. Just
that's right. Who's that guy?
Like a top
Frankie
of the Pops
Valli.
performance.
Just Frankie Valli style
Frankie
drumming.
Valli, Man, I just had a much better thought. The song that's gonna the song that's going to bring the world together is Against All Odds, because the end of the because the peace that the world seeks is against all odds.
Yeah.
But Phil, you gotta maybe
Take a
what if
look at us now?
Yeah, just in the dome. How can you just let me walk away? Just let me leave without a trace. Yeah, and then
Man, he does have so many hits. This is making me want to go and listen to Phil after this.
You watch the whole concert, the Seriously Live concert live in Berlin 1990, and you realize all the songs.
Yeah.
And I think people are also looking back at Phil Collins now in a way that they didn't at the time, because he was notoriously uncool. My uncle David used to always tease me about the fact that I had the best of Phil Collins on compact disc, because Dave was just like, this is the naffest shit ever. And I think it was Noel Gallagher during the heyday of Oasis, or maybe even into the early 2000s, had said like Phil Collins was like the worst musician ever. Because, he was like pure adult contemporary. He was a superstar. This is the other thing about the 1990 concert, is it's one of those moments where you're seeing an artist at the peak of their fame, which just adds to the atmosphere of the concert. Because he was just enormous. Like he just had hit after hit after hit single, and his music was just perfectly tailored to pop of that era.
Yeah. Which is funny because he was at 1990, he was almost 40.
Yeah.
So he's kind of
that's right.
A little bit old for a pop star at the peak of his powers, and also you can see it. He just doesn't look like the other guys. Are sort of really look very cool and sort of, like they're all jazzed up dress wise, and they look very kind of like sort of otherworldly pop stars. And Phil has this kind of just like a guy you might see walking to work in a sort of Midlands town in the UK or something.
It was that era. It was like the era where there was in the 70s and 80s in particular, like male hair loss seemed to be a thing that just didn't really bother a lot of people in the music industry. In particular, you'll see a lot of those worst vinyl album covers of all time, which has always been a popular meme. Yeah. And they often just have men rocking the horseshoe hair loss with a ponytail at the back, just being like in the 1970s. You would just see men that would have had quite severe hair loss, rather than shave it off, which became more of a thing, I guess, like in the 90s into the mid 90s. And then it's funny, actually, we could do an entire podcast on the progression of male hair loss and male hair regrowth technologies, because we're now in an era where there's like incredible procedures for men which essentially like give you your hair back, and they're quite affordable. You just go to Turkey and have that done. But that has only been available, that technology has only been around, or certainly only been available and affordable for like the last, I'd never even heard of this until like 5 years ago. And then some people started appearing in my YouTube channel that used to have like, we're losing their hair, and I'm like, what the fuck now? This, and then you can go and find YouTube videos of people pointing out that like Harry Styles had the corners receding of his hair, and now he just doesn't anymore. So you get young male celebrities who actually arrest it like way before. I think most men, most just regular guys, will wait until there's some quite serious hair loss before they will do anything about it. But in celeb world, you get people like Machine Gun Kelly, where they just have the slightest bit and they just go straight to Turkey, and get it. And then I guess they just get touch ups.
You guess so, and you can take medication to stave it off, which works for some people as well. So even kind of setting aside procedures, there's medical options which weren't there when Phil was just like, you know what, I'm going to let it go bald because I've got no choice in the matter, but I'm not going to pretend. I mean, in fact, he does that now. I think he's kind of got a shaved head because he's a man who keeps up with the trends. But back in the day, he just had like a kind of fop growing off the back of his head.
I also should point out that the Phil Collins Easy Lover Live 1990 Berlin music video, clip that you can go and watch from that concert on YouTube. Another big part of it, it's not all just about the Daryl Stuermer guitar solo. It's also about the singers Arnold, McCuller, and Fred White, who, because I think in Easy Lover, the reason that it's such a nice part of the entire concert is it's the moment where Phil is like, okay, you, my backup singer, go and do a solo. You, my second backup singer, go and do a solo. And then he says to Daryl Stuermer, now you do guitar solo. Because Easy Lover itself, because it was originally a duet, it lends itself to him giving other people the ability to sing a verse.
Yeah.
So
okay.
you'll see you'll see them do the core, Easy Lover, you got a heart, na, 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 na. And then you see Phil point. He points at and then he goes, get on, and he does this thumb. It's great. He's like, get up there. and then Arnold McCuller, he's wearing this beautiful, you got Fred White, who's wearing the open flowy red bodysuit. He does the high singing. He's obviously on the tour because his range is higher.
Okay.
And then Phil, for the second verse, throws to Arnold McCuller and says, he's got this beautiful baritone. And then he says, you jump up there. And Arnold's wearing this beautiful kind of roughly purple suit vest thing. He's looking sensational. And what was a really nice touch is that after I watched this video and sent it to everybody, I was like, man, this is great. I went and did more research on everybody that was performing. And it was such a joy to find out that Arnold McCuller, who's the big baritone singer, he was still performing as a live singer up until 3 years ago. Because what I found was there's a YouTube video of James Taylor, and it says James Taylor, Arnold McCuller tribute. And James Taylor, it's a clip of a James Taylor concert, and James Taylor says, I don't know what to say about this next man. I've been performing with him for, I think maybe James Taylor was using him for 40 years as a live.
Wow.
So Arnold McCuller, his whole career has been essentially, he's known for being a live, a session musician as well and a session singer. But he has performed with on tours with Linda Ronstadt, Beck, Bonnie Raitt, obviously Phil Collins, and I think the main person that he always performed with was James Taylor. And so James Taylor's like, okay, I've been performing with Arnold for 40 years, and and he's retiring very soon. This is going to be my last concert with him because he's going to focus on being an AA sponsor for people that are trying to come out of alcoholism. So he was leaving to focus on that, which is again a very touching thing to mention. And then James Taylor plays one of my favorite James Taylor songs, "Shower the People," and Arnold McCuller does all of they just kind of James Taylor is just, shower the people you love with love, show them the way that you feel. And Arnold's just going, they say the rain would go, love, 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 and sunshine, and just absolutely belting it out. And I just thought, man, what an absolute treat to know that two of my absolute faves, Phil Collins and James Taylor, love this Arnold. And what a lovely thing to see that this Arnold McCuller guy had a career spanning 50, 60 years just performing as a singer with some of the greats. And you know what? You don't get that on if you stare at your phone all day, just walking into shit. You don't get that.
No, it's true. It's true. These days, nobody can have a career that spans 50 or 60 years because
you're not going to be...
attention span's fucked.
You would never have the attention span of Arnold McCuller to be able to have a career of spanning 60 years. You're never going to be a backup singer for Phil Collins and James Taylor and Bonnie Raitt and Beck. You're just staring at your fucking phone, doom scrolling all day.
What a moral. Yeah, so... Have you found, you're a man who loves music, knows a lot about music, and loves Phil Collins.
Yes.
He's a drummer, and he's got some great fills. And drum fills, I mean, not people named Phil like himself. Fills. Have any of them been used in electronic music, the way that, the Amen break has been, or anything like that?
That's a very good question. I don't really know if the In the Air Tonight, which has been voted the greatest drum fill of all time. I don't know if that's been used as it is ripe. I wonder how that would fit into a. And I'm just trying to because it's
you need to speed
In the
it
Air
up a
Tonight
bit.
is quite slow, so you'd have to doom. There we go. Haven't fear. You remember, everybody will remember that drum fill from that weird Cadbury's commercial with the gorilla. Do you remember that? It's like it's again one of the greatest commercials of all time. I think it's a Cadbury Dairy Milk commercial.
Yeah.
With the drum fill gorilla. Do you remember that? Will you remember that for me?
I do.
Just look
vaguely.
now. Just put into Yarchab.
Drum fill gorilla.
Just put in drum fill. Just put in chocolate drum fill gorilla into, and then
That's a good episode title as well. Oh yeah, Cadbury Dairy Milk.
Yeah.
Here we go. I don't think I've seen this ad. That's very clever.
This is regarded as one of the greatest television commercials of all time because it has literally nothing to do. It's one of those clever commercials where it doesn't have anything to do with the product, but it gets people talking. And you just think, like, man, give that marketing, give that advertising team a raise right now.
Yeah. David Guetta, I'm reaching out to you to say, please keep this Phil Collins renaissance going by using the in the Air Tonight Phil in your next hit.
Also, there's another Phil Collins video that's absolutely blown up, which came out in the last 3 months, and that is from Drumo, I believe is the YouTube. Hang on, I'll just look it up now. There's a drumming lessons YouTube channel which is very popular called Drumo. And they did a 2-hour interview, like documentary style film with Phil Collins, which is up on YouTube. And they speak to a bunch of other famous drummers who just talk about how influenced they were by Phil Collins and his Genesis drumming. And people saying things like, man, not only everybody knows him as having an amazing voice and being an amazing singer-songwriter, but people, a lot of people don't know that he was originally a drummer and is regarded by some as being one of the great drummers of all time.
There you
go. So on this Drumo video that came out only 3 months ago, which is an interview with Phil, and he says at the start of it, the interviewer says to him, have you ever spoken this in depth about your drumming before? And he goes, no, I never have. And that video has currently, in 3 months, 4.6 million views.
Wow.
For Phil Collins talking about drumming.
Yeah.
So Phil is having an absolute moment right now. I think maybe a few people have seen clips of him where they've seen that he's a bit older and a bit weaker in the voice. He looks like he's showing his age. He's looking like an older gentleman now. And I mean, I'm looking at the preview of this Drumo video, and it's really beautifully shot. They obviously they got Phil Collins to agree to it. Looks like it's shot in some sort of manor house, and he sits down and maybe this is a good opportunity, John, because I don't think we've spoken about gated reverb on the podcast before, which is kind of the sound of the 80s. Maybe I can just go, this is a fun music tech production opportunity for me to explain something to you. So Phil Collins is responsible for what is often regarded as one of the key music sonic signatures of the 1980s, which is called gated reverb. And essentially what it was is you have your drums, which are just like if you were just to play a drum kit in your living room, particularly if you had a small living room with a lot of soft furnishings, then it would be a very dead sound. Hit the snare, bang, snare ends, bang, nothing, no echo. And then what Phil did, I think he did it originally on a 1980s or late 70s Genesis record. Him and a music producer were working together. And what they did is they took the dry drum sound, so just like a drum kit where you hit the snare, you never hear it anymore. And then what they did is they ran it through a reverb effect, so you get the big echo. Let's just look. This is the perfect opportunity for me to explain how this works. This is echo. So your normal drums are going doom, do ka, do doom, do doom ka. Echo, like adding reverb to the drums is going to go like do ka, do. You can hear my snare now is much longer when I'm going ka.
Yeah.
Listen to that tail on my snare.
Beautiful.
But the problem is that the it's too long. It's like a cat that goes. Listen to that, way too long.
Yeah.
So they ran it through a second effect, which is called a gate. And the gate has a little threshold, which means that once it hits a certain volume, the gate closes. And so you get this effect where you get the sort of massive sound of a reverbed snare, but it snips it so that there's a bit more sonic space for things to keep coming in. So instead of you would get
so
you get that massive sound.
Even just hearing you do that is kind of bringing that sound to my mind of Phil Collins, because you get that, it's that sort of echo chamber sound, but without kind of tripping over itself or reverbing to the point where you can't hear the crispness.
Exactly.
Of each bang. Yeah.
So if you think, I might as well just play the I might put a whole bunch of clips in this episode anyway, so we'll get stung for copyright, but the video will stay up. It's fine. It's just Phil's going to get all the money, and that's fine. Phil, get yourself something nice. But if I play I'll just play the drums to Susudio, because you listen, like the snare on Susudio is like, it's basically like we're at peak gated reverb of the Susudio snare, which is. Yeah. So that's gated reverb. I didn't think I'd get an opportunity. And so anyway, so Phil Collins is the gated reverb guy. He kind of, he and the Genesis album, oh, you know what it was? I think it's a, I think that it is, hang on one second. I think it's a Peter Gabriel album that Phil plays on, because Peter Gabriel was in Genesis.
Yeah.
And so I think Peter Gabriel got Phil to come and play drums on a solo record, and that's where the first gated reverb snare they came up with, gated reverb drums. And then all these 80s producers were like, man, we're loving the sound of this. And then it became the sound. One of the key defining sonic signatures of the 80s was just, let's put a fucking ton of reverb on everything, particularly on the drums, and gate it. And so then you get this like huge sound of reverb, which typifies the 1980s. And guys,
a lot of people don't know that the origin of the term gatekeeping is from Genesis, because Phil and Peter wouldn't tell anyone how they were doing that effect for a long time.
The etymology of gatekeeping comes from Phil and Peter and the producer hiding the secret of how they got a massive drum sound.
Yeah, keeping
on
that
Peter
gate
Gabriel
to themselves. And he's getting right now 24.2 million monthly listens. That's about what I'd expect for Phil.
On Spotify.
Spots. Yeah.
What's the let's have a look at this. Let's just have a look at the Spotify. Yeah. So the top Phil songs, and these are just going to all be absolute bangers. So Another Day in Paradise, 500 million. In the Air Tonight, 800 million. Against All Odds, 500 million. Easy Lover, 427. You Can't Hurry Love, which I think is originally is that originally Diana Ross and the Supremes?
Whenever I'm in a Thai restaurant and my meal's taking a while, I say, well, you can't hurry lob.
And then high five everyone at the table. Am I right? Am I right, guys? Am I right? Am I right, guys? One more night.
No discussion about Phil Collins' Renaissance
night.
would be complete without mentioning that you used to sing the song Easy Lover, but you'd replace the phrase Easy Lover with the name Danny Glover. Can you tell us why? And
Sure.
do you have plans to, because now, of course, Danny Glover's star has, let's face it, waned a little bit, but
Yeah,
Donald Glover is pretty big, so you could easily transpose that onto
that's true.
and take advantage.
Yeah, which is also what makes this Phil Collins Easy Lover a little bit of a Schlagburger with the lot for us, because I used to sing to you all the time, Easy Lover by Phil Collins, but I would replace the words Easy Lover with the words Danny Glover, referring to the American actor Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon. And some people might remember him also from Royal Tenenbaums, where he makes an appearance. But you probably haven't seen Danny Glover in a lot of other films, which is what I was referring to when I changed the lyrics, because what I would sing to John was, he's a Danny Glover. He's got a career you just wouldn't believe in. Just referring to the trouble that he maybe had getting roles because
his lack of belief in his career.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't bet on the career of. So that's that, and I would sing that for years. I would sing Danny Glover. He's a Danny Glover, and I'm just trying to make him see. Which would be me acting as his agent, calling him up and telling him, look, man, you got to start thinking about the next chapter in your life. It's not going to be a Lethal Weapon 4. Mel's become a problematic figure and the studios have put him on ice.
He's a firm no for giving you a role in Apocalypto or Passion of the Christ, so we're going to have to look elsewhere.
Do you like look, man, it's a studio. Boom. The drum. Just can you load up the studio there, John, just for your own ear holes? Because it starts with the drums, which is it's a drum machine. But they've just gone. It's almost like the producers have gone, look, not only did Phil invent gated reverb, and not only has it become huge, so it's full circle. We're just gonna gate the absolute tits off these studio drums until you can basically, your ears basically can't even take them. It's like where you've taken a Snickers bar to its extremes with fat, sugar, and salt. A tiny touch more, and somebody's gonna lose an ear hole. I reckon as well. I reckon the drummer in this studio video is the same drummer that's in the live 1990 in Seriously Live tour. So it's nice. This is also the nice thing you love to see. Is you love to see musicians like Phil that just they get somebody to join their band and they just keep them on for the rest of their career.
Yeah, I'm also looking at there's a version of Sussudio that is AI generated, and it looks like AI from that kind of weird transitional period of maybe 18 months or 2 years ago. So anyone who wants to combine old and new can watch an AI generated music video of the studio on YouTube Shorts. Show sponsors YouTube Shorts. Thanks very much for that.
Man, everybody has to go. What is your homework, everybody? You go. If you really want, I got to tell you, man, I've watched this Easy Lover live in Berlin 1990 YouTube clip about 20 times in the last 3 weeks, because it just puts me in a great mood. I'm adding it to my canon of incredible live performances that put me in a great mood. It goes, it slips right in to the Bryan Adams performance of Heaven at Wembley in 1996. When
cool that you're only half an hour away from the location.
I might just pop down after the podcast. I'll pop down to the Waldbühne, which it translates, everybody, if you're wondering. That's the direct translation, is forest stage.
Okay.
Wald, forest, Bühne, stage. And I might just pop down there and I might just jump the fence and stand in the middle of the crowd and just imagine that I am just a young man who grew up in East Berlin and never thought I would get the chance to see Phil Collins because I'm trapped behind the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe my luck. Just 7 months ago, I would have been shot for trying to be here at this Phil Collins concert, for trying to scale the wall. But now I'm here.
The walls come down and the gate's gone up on the Reverb.
There's something around. I feel like there's something there that's like about a gate or a wall. Like,
that was all I could get. I was turning it over in my mind. There's got to be something about the collapse
like a boundary
of a wall
or a
and the assembly of a gate on Reverb. the collapse of the wall reverberating around Europe and the world.
Something like they tore down a wall so they could put up a gate. Or like a young German man saying, you
Mr.
know,
Gorbachev,
I hate
tear down that wall. Mr. Collins, put up that gate.
That's too good. I feel like that's a T-shirt. That's like a total music production nerd T-shirt. That should just like with like a waveform of a snare drum that's sort of trailing off, and then the gate kicks in.
Yeah.
I think there's not a more perfect way that we could end.
Totally.
Everybody's well. I've been begging John Maloney for a full Phil Collins episode before the podcast. So I want to say thank you, John, for indulging me.
Thank you for taking us on that journey.
Guys, if you love Phil Collins, if you love gated reverb, then get in touch. You can get in touch at hello@dptm.org, or you can write to us on Instagram. We will, of course, post Phil Collins videos for the next week. Phil Collins stories. This is going to be a lot of Phil.
Has anyone met Phil Collins? Got something signed by Phil Collins?
Have you got a Phil Collins anecdote that you want to share with us? We would love to hear it. Yeah. Shout out as well to the Patreon members. We posted our After Dark monthly episode last week, and boy, was it great and weird. We got into some real weird topics that you're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. No. And our Patreons, they loved it. If you want to be a Patreon, find us at DPT. It's patreon.com/DPTM, I believe, or you can just Google Don't Praise the Machine Patreon and get in touch. Let us know if you've got a Phil Collins story. And of course, go and check out the full YouTube video. Tell us what you think of the Phil Collins Human Centipede head bob.
Exactly.
It's going to put you in such a good mood. That's what I love about put down the Prozac, put down the Zoloft, pop in the Phil Collins head bob to Daryl Stuermer guitar solo. Also, you know what's really fun? You know what's really fun is if you just TikTok or Instagram, if you TikTok Easy Lover solo, there's just hundreds of guitarists that are doing the solo on. It's really great. Like you'd go on TikTok and you just go Phil Collins Easy Lover solo, and shitloads of guitarists are just doing this, like repeating the solo, because it's people love this Daryl Stuermer guitar solo. So there's just people ripping the Easy Lover solo, like mirroring it note for note on TikTok. And it's hard to argue that that's a bad thing.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. No, that's a good thing. It's hard to say that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue that that's a good thing.
And of course, we all know, I'm sure many of us have heard the persistent rumor, which apparently was a factor in his decision to retire from music, that Phil Collins divorced his second wife by fax, which is also a very historically specific event, reliant as it is on an obsolete or relatively obsolete technology. And he did that in Frankfurt. He sent the fax from Frankfurt. So there's a wonderful tradition a sisterhood between Phil Collins and the nation of Germany, and he should, in my view, he should retrace his steps. Although he says that rumor was is largely false. That he did send a fax to his second wife and referenced in the fax the fact that their relationship was over, but it was already clear to them, and it's not true that he divorced her by fax. Have you, DPTMers, have you ever broken up with anyone by fax? And would you?
Has anyone else out there left a spouse via an obsolete communication technology? I'm showing my age here. I left one of my wives via MySpace.
Exactly.
John left his third wife through a email that he had found on GeoCities.
That's right.
He used to.
I sent her. She didn't get my beeper message telling her it was over, so I had to set up a GeoCities page. I set up a GeoCities page called John Maloney and Sarah Smith. It'sover.com.
with a little viewer ticker down the bottom. How many page visits to the site had got? And a bunch of shitty 3-frame animated GIFs. That's great. Thank you so much, everybody, and we can't wait to see you next week.
The podcast.
Bah.